I'm recapping the substitution method to solve a system of equations, and I'm going to teach you how to use the elimination method. Let's start with the elimination method. We're solving a system of equations. We're using the elimination method now. So step one is make one of the variables look the same but negative. So we have a y here and a y here. They're almost the same, but they both have a negative sign. We want one to be positive and we want one to be negative. So do you see how they're both negative? We want one to be positive and one to be negative. So how can we do that? We're going to multiply the bottom equation by -1 because it's going to change the sign. So let's do that. Multiply that by -1 and we'll leave the top equation the same. So -3x minus y equals -1, and the bottom one is changing. We're multiplying each of the variables by -1. That turns to a plus y, which is good because negative y times -1 is positive y. We want a positive y. Remember, we wanted one of the y's to be positive and one of them to be negative. So now we're on to step 2. We're going to add down. So -3x minus 1x is -4x. The y's eliminated, and then we have 12 plus -1 is 13 plus -1 is 12. So as you can see, the y, it was eliminated, which is what we wanted. That was the goal. That's why we made one of them positive, and that's why we made the other one negative. That's why step 1 is important. Step 3 is to just solve for x now. We have to finish this up and figure out what x is. So I can divide both sides by -4. I've got x equals -3. And now I'm just setting up my answer. So far I know what the x is. Now I want to find out what the y value is. So I'm going to take that x equals -3 and plug it in to the equation, either equation, to solve for the other variable. So I'm just going to plug it into x minus y equals -13. But I'll put -3 is the same thing as x. So I put that there, and now I can solve for y. So I can add 3 to both sides. Now I've got -y equals -10. Divide both sides by -1, and I get y equals +10. So that is my answer. The solution is -3 and 10. Let's move on to the substitution method. So for the substitution method, I'm going to take a little longer to explain this one again. I think it's a little harder than the elimination, so I'll just walk through each step as we go. First, let's pick a variable to solve for, and we always want to pick one that looks a little easier to solve for. I'm looking at that second equation. It looks like it's going to be pretty easy to solve for x because I just need to add y to both sides. That would be a super quick way to just solve for x, so I'm going to do that. So I have x equals y minus 13. And now the second step is to substitute it in for that variable. So I know that that's the same thing as x. X is the same thing as y minus 13. So I'm going to plug that in. So now I've got -3. Instead of x, I'm writing y minus 13 because that's the same thing as x. They're equal. So I'm plugging it in right there for the x. And then finishing it up. Minus y equals -1. And my third step is to just solve for that variable. So we're going to solve for y. That's all I see there in the red equation. I'm going to solve for the variable. So I have -3y, just distributing, plus 39 minus y equals -1. I'm going to subtract 39 from both sides, and I'm going to put together that -3y and the -y. It becomes -4y. Divide both sides by -4, and I get 10. Let's go through that real quick one more time. So I have -3y minus, it's like -1y, so those come together as -4y. And then I subtracted 39 from both sides and got me -40 equals -4y. Divide both sides by -4, and I get 10. Next step, plug it into solve for the other variable. So we know what y is. All we got to do is pop that into one of those equations at the top, and we can figure out what x is. So I've got x minus, instead of y, I'm putting 10 because I know y equals 10. equals negative 13. And let's solve for x. So add 10 to both sides. X equals negative 3. So I'm going to write my solution. X equals negative 3, y is 10. So this is how I write my solution.